let me go ahead and, of course, bring up, of course, the slide for today. Of course, same ones last time. Of course, we used, of course, ancient India that had the four before. And, of course, you saw that little short video. I had kind of a hard time trying to find a video on the caste system, but that was, I guess, the best one I could find. But we're going to talk about that system, which, is still around today. It's banned. It's been banned in places like India, the caste system. But, a lot of it's still prevalent, especially in the rural areas of India. And I guess I can kind of give you a definition of what it is right there with that slide banner. But it is kind of a social system, social strata, if you want to call it that. It's not just based in India, but it's all based in, I guess, wherever there's like Hindu religions that are throughout South Asia, probably Indonesia, maybe even elsewhere, like outside, like wherever Hinduism spread to and all that. It is primarily based on people's lineage, like who they're related to and all that, social status. And you see there, it's also based on, believe it or not, your occupation. Yeah, quite often that's true. And they think that the caste system started in India when the Aryans came in. And I think how it got going was that I guess when the Aryans conquered India, they basically, I guess, to divide themselves from themselves being like in the upper class to the other indigenous peoples that were already there. They kind of created these different social strata that's there. There's kind of a debate. Trying to come back in. Okay, good. There you are. Are you there? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, sorry. There's kind of a debate about the name caste, like where it comes from. There's two variations of, the Portuguese were in India, like in modern times, before the British came in. So I guess there's one theory that the word caste came from the word casta. You may have heard of the system of the casta or caste system that the Spanish have. Like in the New World, they start dividing people up based on like their race and lineage and all of that. So the word casta means lineage. And also they have another translation too, they think maybe, that from the British perspective, that it comes from the Latin word castus, which actually means pure, or it can mean clean. And I think the British kind of viewed the different social classes as being like the ones on top being more pure, and then the ones on the bottom as being less pure. So some people kind of see it as that as well. Then it also Hindus kind of have another name for it in India. They call it actually the Varna System as well. That's what they call it, which can mean either color or class. So it's obviously something to do with your lineage or race, ethnicity, that kind of thing. But it also has to do with your social standing. In Hinduism, they actually believe that the caste system, I haven't really talked about the gods yet in Hinduism. There was a god you may have heard of named Brahma. You ever heard of Brahma? Brahma was like one of the creator gods of Hinduism. And Brahma was believed to be the god that created the castes and all that, the four main castes. They were believed to have come from the body of that god, Brahma. So get to about the different ones they have, but they have the four main castes are the Brahmin, the Kshatriya, the Vaishyas, and the Shudra or Sudra. So each one came from a certain body part, of course, of Brahma. Brahmin came from his mouth, Kshatriya from the arms, Vaishya from the, I guess, stomach, and then Shudra or Sudra from the feet. You see them in the slide, but that's how they divide them up usually. The Brahmin were believed to be the priestly caste a long time ago. And they're the ones that were in the temples and, chanted read the Vedas, etc. So they're in the heart of the Hindu religion and all that. And that was considered one of the highest castes that they had. Kshatriya are like the rulers, nobility, administrators running the state and all that. The rulers are often called either a Raja, which you may have heard of, or what they call a Maharaja. Raja like a king or prince. Then a Maharaja is like a great king, like kind of like an emperor, kind of like the guy Shaka the Great. Yeah, Shaka the Great, and which we'll get to him later. And then the Vaishya, it's like kind of like the working class. It's kind of like a middle class. They do all the work and stuff. Merchants, I think, usually go into their artisans, skilled type laborers, usually go in there. Shudra are servants. They do like unskilled type labor and so on. Also, people can be in what they call a jati, which is like a birth group, which this is like a type of community you live in, tribe, village, or clan. And they also divide people oftentimes based on their occupation. I've got an example of that. Oftentimes in India, your surname will reflect your jati, like who you're related to and community and all that. You know, Gandhi, remember, was a famous prime minister, of course, of India later. His actual name meant perfume seller because I guess some of his people, that's what they did. They sold perfume. And so Dhobi meant washerman, stava, military scribe. So that's just kind of the different names they have, which are connected to your, caste system. So you kind of never get away from it. Like you can't marry people in different castes, different jati. Has been something that's been kind of a problem also as well. And throughout India, certain people like in the lower strata, have trouble trying to make it successfully, go to university or whatever, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a common problem, which is still around. But they're trying to kind of create kind of like affirmative action, like they have in this country sometimes to help people out that are on the bottom as well. There's one on the bottom that they call different names. Outcast is the common name. It's kind of like a fifth caste. They're often called the untouchables, the untouchability, that kind of thing. And these are considered people that are kind of almost like outside the caste system. And according to Hindus, it's believed that these people were kind of bad, like in previous lives. They've had a lot of bad rebirths, that kind of thing. So they ended up on the bottom. The Dalit people, of course, of India are good examples of these. I think they think the Dalit people might be like related to indigenous people that have been in India a long time, possibly. Not just in India and other areas like around India. And they make up a large population of India, like close to, I want to say 200 million people, maybe, like 16% of the population of India, a pretty big chunk of them are in that population. A lot of times they have to do a lot, like I said in the video, they have to do a lot of jobs that are kind of like the lowest, like sanitation, cleaning out sewages and things like that. So anyway, that's how they break it down. But like I said, it's they in the actual Indian constitution, it's actually banned. They can't do it anymore, but people still do it anyway. It's kind of, I guess, part of tradition and part of their society. And it's, I think, more prevalent in the rural areas compared to, say, New Delhi or Bombay, that kind of thing. So Mumbai, but, that's still the way it is. But I think starting with Gandhi's, tried to get rid of it, but it's, like I said, still prevalent. So anyway, just kind of talking about the caste system and what that was about. Let me go ahead and move on, of course, next to get into like the different gods, of course, in Hinduism, which are also famous. They're, of course, one of the first gods, of course, up there you see, which is the god Brahma. The Hindu gods, like the ones that are the three most famous ones, which are Brahma, you see there in the picture. Also, what is Vishnu and Siva or Shiva. They're considered the three most famous supreme gods in Hinduism. They're often called the Trimurti, which means the three forms of Brahman. in which they believe Brahman was mostly important in basically creating things, maintaining the universe, and then destroying or ending things. So that's pretty much the cycle of, I guess, life and death, just like reincarnation and samsara. So you see in the picture there, that slide, that, the first one is the creator god, Brahma. So he's considered the one that created, I guess, creates all life, creates the Veda, because they think that with each head there, that each mouth represents each of the Vedas, the 4 Vedas that we talked about, like the Rig Veda. I wonder if it also represents the 4 main castes, as well, which I guess it could also as well. Brahma is, of course, I'll get to later, is married to a consort, Saraswati. She's one of the supreme goddesses in Hindu. I'll get to her later. But he's believed to be also the one that created all knowledge, like even like the language systems like Sanskrit and all the related languages or whatever kind of descended from Brahma in general. But over time, Brahma has not become very popular like it used to be. There's not as many temples in like India compared to Vishnu and Shiva, which are very popular. So it's kind of declined over time. Then, of course, the next one they have, of course, and each one has a, I don't know if you have to know about that, but each one has a vehicle that they ride around in mythology. Like, I think the Mount of Brahma is Hamsa, which is swan god of some type. So each one has a vehicle that they ride around in mythology overall. Then you got Vishnu. Vishnu is often called Vishnu the preserver, Vishnu the maintainer as well. He maintains the universe after it's been created. He, of course, is very popular god. In fact, the most popular god overall in Hinduism. There's even different variations of Vishnu that have become popular over the years, such as the Rama and Krishna. If you know much about those 2 gods, those 2, of course, are incarnations of Vishnu. I think the 7th incarnations. An incarnation is like a type of deal where a god comes down to earth and visits mankind. So I think they think Buddha could have been as well. Even like Jesus in Christianity can almost be viewed as kind of like that as well, like an incarnation or avatar as well. Yeah, he's got a vehicle too. He flies around on this bird god. I think it's a falcon god whose name is Garuda. And then he's also has a consort too. I'll get to later. I'll talk about her later, which is Lakshmi, who's very popular as a supreme goddess. So that's Vishnu, who you see in that picture. Then they have one more supreme god, of course, which is, of course, you may have heard of, named Shiva, or also pronounced Shiva, either way. Of course, he's the so-called destroyer god in Hinduism. Definitely the second most popular god compared to, with Vishnu as well. There's also Ganesha, we'll get to later. It's pretty popular. And Shiva is kind of seen as that god in Hinduism that kind of ends life and is involved with the whole reincarnation thing, like the end of samsara, so the end of life and death, basically. And yeah, you can see behind his right shoulder, he has a vehicle too. He rides around on, which is Nandi, 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 who's like a Hindu bull god. And that's kind of part of why a lot of Hindus don't eat beef. You wonder about that. They eat other things. I think a lot of them are also vegetarian, some of them, but that's why they don't eat beef. So, because he's associated, I guess, with their gods. He also has a consort too, which I'll get you later. Depends on which one. They have one called Kali and one called Shakti. That's either one, which are kind of similar to each other. So, anyway, hey, let me mute that. So So that's the big supreme gods. I'll get to Ganesha too. That's a famous one. They have like a lot of gods, but I'm just kind of going through the ones that are the most supreme ones that are well known also as well. Let me get to the goddesses real quick here. Now we have also Saraswati as well. She's one of the three main supreme goddesses that they have in Hinduism. It's mostly a goddess of knowledge, but she's also associated with things like art, music, science, math, anything to do with that overall. She, of course, as you can see there, the consort of what is Lord Brahma. Should I get this thing a little bigger here? But so yeah, Lord Brahma, yeah, you can see there on the bottom left, that's a Veda, like one of the books, they think that if you know about a lot of the Eastern religions like Buddhism, Jainism, also Hinduism, the swastika has often been used as a symbol, which it's a kind of a symbol that's been around for a long time. I mean, and now it's, I guess, associated with the Nazis and all that, but you often see it on temples, in the East. The swastika symbol is actually a symbol of good things, fortune, good luck, peace, harmony. And I guess the Nazis later kind of perverted it, and Hitler saw it on a church, like in a Catholic church of some type, and kind of borrowed it. But I guess some people think it's associated with the Aryans and all that, or Aryan race, but it really has nothing to do with that. But Saraswati is like I said, one of the three supreme deities in the goddesses in Hinduism. Now they also have Lakshmi, who I'll also move on to talk about as well. Yeah, Lakshmi, right here, she's another supreme goddess in Hinduism. She's often associated with all kinds of things: fortune, wealth, prosperity. She's usually associated with what is the lotus plant, also elephants as well. She has a brother that's very famous in Hinduism, you may have heard of, named Ganesha. Ganesha is actually a very popular god in Hinduism. In fact, probably the third most popular god behind Vishnu and Shiva. And he's seen as the elephant god, the god that kind of moves obstacles, not just, physical ones, but maybe mental ones or whatever in life and so on. And he's often associated with things like luck, fortune, wisdom, also the arts for some reason. Like he's a patron of the arts, things like that. I think the white elephant is very considered as a very sacred animal, like a type of white elephant, which is kind of rare overall. Then there's one more talk about like goddess Y that's very famous. They usually call her Shakti, but of course there's other variations of her too, like Kali. Shakti is actually the most famous of the supreme goddesses in Hinduism. And she's often associated with all kinds of things: destruction, time, energy, power, I guess death, because I guess, Shiva is associated with that too as well. So she's like the consort or wife of, like I said before, of Shiva, although it depends on which mythology you look at, but both are kind of seen as either one as being that. And there's also different names for Kali and Shakti. So kind of just talking about some of these different gods that they have in Hinduism, but I think it's believed that the Hindus may have had a million gods, at one point. They've kind of narrowed them down. I think some students ask me, is Hinduism, is it polytheistic or is it monotheistic? It's kind of like both, because they kind of believe there probably is some kind of supreme god or supreme universe, that's out there. But they think all these gods are kind of part of the same universe. So it's kind of like monotheistic, but it's polytheistic at the same time, All right, that's pretty much it talking about Hinduism. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move on to talk about next. We need to get into, of course, the rise of Buddhism. Of course, that also kind of came out of India as well. Buddhism started close to about 500 BC. So maybe about 2,500 years ago is about when it started overall. And it's founded by this Indian teacher who was like a philosopher who traveled throughout India, although I think he was mostly based in the Ganges River Basin, kind of in eastern India. His real name, he goes by all kinds of names. They call him Siddhartha Gautama is a common name. They call him. It's also called Gautama Buddha. And there's also another name you heard of named Shakyamuni Buddha. So he has all kinds of names that he was called. Of course, Buddha or the Buddha is a nickname that his followers, students called him later, which meant the enlightened one or also the awakened one is what it also means. I think I've got a picture of Buddha I can show you, which is right here. The statues of Buddha, the enlightened one, and Buddha they think was some kind of Indian prince. So he may have come from the Kshatriya, that second caste I told you about that they had. So they think he was a prince. And I think they think he was going to become a king of India originally. And he decided at the age of 29 to abandon his family. I think he had a wife and he had like at least one son. I think he had. And there was a story that I think they always tell about Buddha. You may have heard this story, but one day he was riding in his chariot through like a city, and he noticed like several people that were there. He saw one man that was terribly sick. He saw another guy that was old, I think, and dying. He saw another man that was dead, like there's a dead body laying on the ground. And he saw a monk. And he thought to himself, I want to be the monk. And so Buddha basically, he became this traveling teacher throughout India, and he sought like an answer to like what can possibly, end the cycle of reincarnation, samsara. There's got to be a way, around it, maybe a shortcut to end all these rebirths. And he thought that's all why people were suffering, that it was all because we were constantly getting reincarnated and all that. So Buddha believes that the key to ending samsara is what he called they call the middle path or middle way, sometimes called the central path as well. So to live some kind of spiritual life where spiritual life of like right living, where your soul can be then liberated and seek what he calls nirvana or nibbana, which is kind of like a Buddhist equivalent to what is moksha. This middle way or middle path of right living is believed to be kind of like a path of moderation between two extremes, which on one extreme you've got self-indulgence, then on the other one you've got self-mortification. What's the difference? Well, self-indulgence would be, I guess, if you like just indulge yourself and ate everything, all kinds of things. Drink this, like drunk alcohol, like drink several bottles of alcohol every day. I'll drink 3 bottles of vodka a day. That kind of thing. As examples. Food, all the sex. I have sex 10 times a day. I'm just saying, it's all kinds of things. It could be any of those things. And then the opposite, self-mortification, would be the opposite, where guess what? Total celibacy, right? No drinking at all, nothing. Very little eating, like extreme fasting even maybe. So it's totally the opposite. So what Buddha wants to do is live his life somewhere in the middle, path between those two extremes. And that's part of what the whole middle path is about. and all that. Then Buddha teaches what they call the Four Noble Truths. It's one of the main teachings of Buddhism, which are important. It basically teaches like Buddhists, like what causes like samsara, like the cycle of reincarnation, and how to like stop it and reach nirvana, like the keys to it, and all of that. So I'll go through and talk about each, of the different noble truths, the Four Noble Truths, of what it is. Now, I'll give you also the Sanskritic name that they also call it as well. I don't think I've got slides on that showing that. I don't think I do. But I'll put up some. I got some banners here I can put up for you to show what each one is. So the first noble truth that he taught first, Buddha, was called dukkha, which is a Sanskritic word meaning suffering. What it meant by that was that he believed that samsara was caused by people suffering and sorrow throughout their whole life. They're constantly getting, born and reborn. Like they're born, they live their life, they die, and they get reborn again. This cycle is going on for a long time, forever. And so their soul is suffering, basically. So dukkha. Second noble truth is what they call samudaya, arising. I guess it can mean different translations, I know. Continuous rebirths are caused by people seeking pleasures that don't last, physical things that don't last. So people are constantly trying to find food, trying to make money, physical things. Like I talked about drinking and all this other stuff. So people are constantly doing this. And so that's the other thing that's causing people to get reincarnated, the cycle of samsara. Samudaya, arising. Third noble truth, nirodha, means ending, or I think cessation, I think is another word they use too, cessation. That's where you renounce your cravings, desires. That's spelled, I don't know what happened to word. It didn't put the right word in when I typed it. But it should be, the word should be obsessing. Not sure why it spelled it that way. Yeah, obsessing would be the word to use. Which let me put it on there. Yeah, obsessing over your desires. So not to do that. Water over the bridge. So Buddha believes that if you don't obsess over trying to seek all these cravings and desires, you will be more happier and not be suffering so much. Then the last one, the fourth noble truth is called Magga, or the path, I guess is what it means, which they're talking about the central path, middle path, which is also called the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's all called the same thing. It's all the same name. This is a Buddhist path to the liberation of the soul, reaching nirvana or nirvana, basically. And it consists of like 8 practices of following Dharma, which we've talked about before, ethical, moral conduct, and so on in life, which was part of the so-called Dharma wheel. I think I've got the Dharma wheel and all that I can bring up for you, which is right here. It's also got the 8 spokes on the Dharma wheel, which is called Dharma wheel or Dharma Chakra. That's what they usually call it as well. And so it's these 8 Dharma you have to follow, like right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, which I think also can mean meditation as well. If you want it right here, those are the 8, which are right. So right view, right, I have different translations of it. Right resolve, it's sometimes used too, I guess. Right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. So yeah, if you follow all 8 of those, I guess it's believed that what will happen if you live your right life the right way, like the middle path, like moderation, that eventually you will stop reincarnating. So that's in theory, about that. But each one of those spokes on there, represents, one of the 8 Dharma. which the so-called Dharma wheel, which is the Sanskrit name is Dharma Kakra. Sometimes one or two words. Now, what happened with Buddhism? If you know about Buddhism, it spread. So it didn't stay in India. It went mostly to parts of East Asia. That's where it actually ended up. You can see from Mongolia all the way down through China to Southeast Asia and then into Korea, Japan. It's pretty much spread all over the place. Sri Lanka, very popular as well. Could put it up here right here, but you can see that's mostly where it is. Also got the population-wise as well. Yeah, about 500 million people practice Hinduism. That should be Buddhism in the world. They practice it overall, but then they're wrong. So that, yeah, it's spread throughout the world, and about that many people practice it, about 500 million people practice it throughout the world overall. And yeah, you can see the country that has the most is China. Like there's, of course, a lot of it. You've heard of the Tibetan Buddhists that are very, very famous, related back to like the Dalai Lama, of course. And of course, Mongolia has a lot of people that are Buddhist as well. A lot of your southeastern countries you see there, from Burma, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, of course, Vietnam, of course, China, Korea, and of course, Japan. You can also see there are different types of Buddhism. I guess they usually call them schools of thought or whatever. So there's 3 schools of thought in Buddhism. Vajrayana Buddhism. That one's really the most famous because of the Tibetan Buddhist movement, all that. I guess the Dalai Lamas kind of helped spread that one. It's either called Northern Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. So it's mostly based in Mongolia, China. Theravada Buddhism is another one. It's also famous in Southern Buddhism, which you see in Southeast Asia. It's dominant. And the Mahayana was mostly Eastern Buddhism. China, Japan, Korea is where those are based overall. Buddhists are pretty much non-violent, that type. So they don't believe in like making war, killing people, and things like that. That's one thing they are known for, the Buddhists today. So they avoid violence. So sometimes you'll see them protest and they'll set themselves on fire. I don't know if you've seen that before, but that's something they're kind of known for as kind of a type of protest or whatever. So that's Buddhism and how it spread. And that's one thing about Buddhism. It's spread, like I said, it's spread throughout the world, Buddhism. You always see these actors or famous people that have kind of converted to it, like Buddhism, and all of that. I've known some people that have been Buddhist that are not even like, say, Asian or whatever, Indian, that kind of thing. So it's quite common all over the world, people that are Buddhist. All right, let me also talk about there's another variation of that broke off from Hinduism, which is called Jainism, which you may have heard of Jainism. Jainism was this type of Indian religion that started, they think, around the same time as Buddhism did. So it broke away from the traditional Hindu schools of thought and all of that. You can see a picture on the right there. There's a man named Mahavira, who they think they also called Vardhamana, they called him as well, may have founded it. They think he was like some kind of Indian prince of some type, kind of like Buddha was, maybe even knew Buddha, or kind of a debate about who influenced who there with that, because they may have influenced each other, religious-wise. But he was some kind of teacher and philosopher that was also in India at the same time was when Buddha was. He lived about 6th, 5th century BC. But his movement was a little different. Mahavira kind of sought that same deal where they're trying to seek some kind of path to ending samsara, to end reincarnation and all that. But theirs was like more to extreme that I told you about. Remember that whole thing, that middle path we talked about? Well, the Jains or Janists wanted to follow more of a self-mortification method, where they used extreme asceticism, just that one I told you about, where it's like, don't eat hardly anything and don't drink anything and those kind of things. So their idea of that is more extreme compared to Buddhism. So it's like almost like an extreme form of Buddhism, more or less. The word Jan or Jana, which is what they call Jana, you call it Jan or Jana Dharma, either one, comes from the word Jan, which is a Sanskritic word meaning to conquer, as in conquer your desires. Is what it means. So they're trying to conquer their whatever their desires, their physical things that they want, prevent themselves from having it. Now, I'll give you examples of self-mortification that they could do. We're talking about use of fasting, and sometimes extreme fasting, where like some of these Jans would even practically starve themselves to death, thinking that would help them reach nirvana. Having very little possessions, material things, wearing very little clothes. Look at Mahavira. He's not wearing much, like almost naked. Maybe some kind of loincloth. Hardly any money. So like John Lennon said about, oh, there's no money, that kind of thing. And a lot of them are vegetarianism. They're vegetarians, because they don't believe in killing all living things, that kind of deal. So lots of prayer, meditation. They kind of live the life of a monk. It's pretty much the way they are. They're that kind of lifestyle. It's not as popular compared to, Buddhism is like way more popular, like I said, 500 million people practice that, but this one's like maybe 5 to 6 million. It's mostly dominant in India, like in South Asia, but it has spread into eastern parts of Asia. I've actually read that there's people that are starting to convert to it for some reason, more or less. So it's not a very popular type of religious and philosophical system, which both of them, Jainism and Buddhism, kind of are. So that's kind of, talking about, Jainism and what that was. It says skip it, but I'm going to go ahead. I covered it anyway about that. All right. So yeah, let me talk about one more thing about India that's famous. Now they have, of course, a dynasty you may have heard of. That's called the Marion Empire. Yeah, the Marion Empire. Of course, that's Shaka the Great there you're looking at. He's one of their great rulers. And the Marion Empire was an Indian empire that developed on the subcontinent of India. In fact, it was considered the first major empire that they had, developed in the Iron Age. You can see there. Existed between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC. So it was around 100-something years overall, almost 150 years. And this empire was considered, by the way, one of the largest empires that India ever had. I'll get to it later, but it stretched from like Afghanistan all the way to the Ganges River Basin. So it was huge in size there. And they believe it formed after Alexander the Great had conquered most of the Near East. We'll get to Alexander the Great with the Macedonians, but he conquers the Persian Empire, which controlled part of India. But what happened was in 323 BC, Alexander the Great died. And so his empire started breaking up. And it's believed that the Indians took advantage of that. They conquered it. They added it to a vast empire, which would stretch throughout most of India. So it's quite possible that Alexander the Great had a major influence on this particular, empire that formed later. The empire, of course, had a founder that was part of it. I'll put him up on the screen. His name was Chandragupta. Chandragupta, which Gupta is kind of a popular name in India. And I guess his full name is Chandragupta Maurya. He's the grandfather of Shaka the Great. You see there in that picture. And he was considered the founder of the Marian Empire. It's believed that he knew Alexander or may have met him. It's possible. I think he may have fought against him at one point throughout that area of Western India. And Chandragupta was able to amass a huge army, which there's been a debate how big his army was, but they think his army may have been like 500,000 or more troops in it. with also elephant forces, which the Indians were famous for using elephants as like cavalry pack animals. And his empire stretched at one point from Afghanistan into what is India, also controlled parts of Bangladesh. So it's a massive empire. And they think he conquered most of the empire. At least 80% of it was probably conquered by that ruler. He was also known for founding a capital of the empire. In fact, it's one of the oldest capitals in India today. It's still, the ruins are still there today. Now near a city now, but it's called Pataliputra, which was built on the Ganges River basin because that's where the empire was based around. The empire stretched westward, like into Pakistan and probably Afghanistan. But most of the empires later in India are based in the Ganges and not in the Indus River basin. The ruins of the city are near a modern city in India called Patna, Patna, which is in eastern India, close to the Bangladesh border. And it's considered one of the oldest capital cities in India because it was used by other states later over time. I don't have it in the slide, but Chandragupta had a son who was named Bendusara. I'll kind of mention briefly about him, but he was the second Marion king that came afterwards, who ruled next. They don't know too much about him. There's very little information about Bendusara, although they think, of course, the main thing about him is that he was the father of the Shaka the Great, who came later. But what they do know about those two, that a lot of the early kings of the Marians, they were actually Jains. They converted to Jainism, and there's legends that either him or maybe his father, I'm not sure which it was, they think that one of them may have starved themselves to death, like in extreme fasting that we talked about. That's how he may have died. One of them, either him or his father. I'm not sure which one it was. It's kind of a legend about it, and I think it might be made up. Then, of course, the one that's the most famous of the Marian kings and the greatest is the Shaka the Great, of course, who ruled in the 3rd century BC, about mid-3rd century. And he's the peak ruler of their empire. If you look at this map here, that's about how big the Marian Empire got under his reign. So you can see it stretched down almost to the bottom of India. So not quite the whole thing of India, but pretty much most of it, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and even part of Afghanistan. So it was a huge empire formed at that point. He's famous for conquering an area which is called Kalinga, which is, if you go to this map here, it's an area which is kind of on the Bay of Bengal. It's kind of like up in this area here, the Bay of Bengal. He conquered this area right here. And I think that was considered like one of the last conquests. I think by the time we get down to like pretty much his reign, they've conquered down to the bottom of India, the Deccan Plateau, right here. And apparently in these conquests, he may have massacred a lot of people, like in conquering that area. Like I think it's like 100,000 or more he may have killed in a lot of these wars against these different peoples there. I guess indigenous peoples that were in India. Because of it, Shaka eventually decided to convert to Buddhism and live more of a non-violent lifestyle and all that. And so Shaka became famous for becoming this pro-Buddhist guy that promoted the spread of Buddhism throughout Asia. He also began to build a lot of temples in India to Buddha, and he built a lot of shrines to Buddha to honor him as well. So those are things that he was, of course, known for. So that's basically Shaka. They had other rulers later that came after he did, but they weren't very good. And over time, the empire collapsed and broke up. About the 2nd century BC, I think it's close to 180 or something like that. Eventually, it broke up, and India became ruled by these different kings or princes, which I told you are called a Raja, pretty much. And you won't really see like a unified India again until the golden age of the Guptas, when they take power in the 300s CE or AD, which is the so-called Gupta Empire. It comes later, which I won't really probably talk too much about. But yeah, India did have these kingdoms and states that ruled there at one point. And I guess this was kind of like the peak period of the, golden age of India during the so-called Iron Age that we're talking about. So anyway, that's pretty much it for India. Of course, I've got a few minutes left. I can also go ahead and just go ahead and review for the rest of the time. And that's it. If anybody has any questions while I'm reviewing, let me know. Just share that with me, and I could try to answer them or whatever. If not, you can, like I said, send me questions later if you got any when I post the video lecture on YouTube. But anyway, yeah, so go back to what we were talking about earlier. So what is the caste system? The caste system is the social class system it was based in India. That was, based on people's lineage, who they're related to. And also, I guess, on the different Hindu theories on, samsara, like reincarnation as well. They had different names for it. Hindu name, of course, common is the Varna or Varna system. Then we have the caste, the four main castes, of course, I told you about, were the Brahmin on top, priestly class, Kshatriya, like the ruling type caste, Vaishya, and then you have, of course, the Sudra. Then the one on the bottom is the Dalits, which are like, the outcasts, which are often called untouchables, is what they double. That's their nickname, the untouchables, because they're kind of seen as being very impure. I guess they did bad things in previous rebirths. Three main principal gods in Brahman, of course, associated with Brahman, of course, in Hinduism, are Brahma, the creator god, Vishnu, the preserver god, and then, of course, you got Shiva, the destroyer god. Then you got of course, different deities, of course, that are very famous. You've got, excuse me, you've got Saraswati, of course, which is the goddess associated with like knowledge and stuff like that. Lakshmi, associated with like fortune, wealth, prosperity. And then the third one is like Kali or Shakti, which is associated with things like destruction, time, power, energy, maybe death, even as well. So all those are your supreme goddesses. They're the most popular. Ganesha, so-called elephant god, often associated with fortune, wealth, luck. Also a god that is like I told you, a mover of obstacles, who was used as a pachyderm and stuff like that. Ganesha is very popular too. Third most popular god behind Vishnu and Shiva. Who was the founder of Buddhism? Siddhartha Gautama, of course, was his original name, but everybody calls him Buddha. But he's, of course, known by different names. What was the main goal of Buddhism? The main goal of Buddhism, kind of like Jainism, was to find some kind of path to reach, to end samsara and to reach what they call nirvana. And that was, of course, he did this through following what he calls a middle path, which was a middle path or middle way, which was a path of moderation, like a way of living that could get you there. And part of that was his teachings of Buddha, which became known later as the Four Noble Truths, which I went through first, second, third, and fourth Noble Truths. And the fourth Noble Truth was the one that's the more famous one. That's the one that's actually called the middle path or middle way. And that's that 8 dharma that you have to follow, like eight dharma, which are right ways of living that will eventually reach you to nirvana, and you'll end reincarnation, the cycle of samsara. Then I talk about the Marion. Yeah, Marion Empire was the empire emerged in India after Alexander the Great's empire collapsed in the 4th century. Of course, when that was, late 4th century. And the founder was Chandragupta Maurya, and his dynasty was named after his family name. So it is either called Maurya or Marion. So you'll see it as either one for what it is. Capital, I told you, is Pataliputra, which is in eastern India along the Ganges River. It's located near a city called Patna, which is a modern city in India. I don't know if you have to know as much about Bendusara, but of course his son was Shaka the Great. And Shaka, of course, was considered the greatest ruler of the Marian Empire. He reigned in the 3rd century BC. He was mostly known for being a patron of Buddhism, trying to spread it around Asia. And he also was a patron to Buddhism within India because of building so many temples and shrines to Buddha and all of that. So anyway, just kind of like reviewing over that real quick. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything. It doesn't look like anybody put anything up for me. But if anybody has any questions later, let me know about that. Of course, let me go ahead and talk about a few things before we go. Anyway, don't forget, of course, about wrapping up your first exam. So I hope everybody, at least on here, that's wrapped up their first exam. Of course, I'm going to have other students look at this video later, of course, this week. But make sure you do wrap up your first exam online. Remember, I did push it back to tonight. So if you haven't done it yet, get it done. I am going to have a makeup period coming up, I think, next week. Because I think next week is midterms, I believe. That's correct. Because I know we have the fall break at the end of next week, which doesn't really affect this class because I'm putting my lectures up on Monday, Wednesdays. But I'm probably going to have a makeup period, but it's not probably going to include the exam. It's going to include like assignments and maybe quizzes you've missed and all that. So don't forget about that. Also, don't forget about the Canvas quiz, the new Canvas quiz I put up, of course, which is on the Persian Empire and also on the Phoenicians and Israelites. So do get that done. And that's it for pretty much today and I guess for the week. So let me know if you have any questions later. Like I've said, I am going to put this video up on my YouTube channel probably close to noontime or whatever. So let me know whatever kind of questions you have about it. Of course, at 1 o'clock, I will be having a lecture as well. The same thing pretty much coming up. So that's it for today. Hope you all are doing good out there and you're safe and take care. So have a good weekend coming up. So take care.